Build your bridges and boundaries with empathy, humility, and respect. And every moment is an opportunity to learn something new. Every day is a class that teaches us how to use a new tool because life is a school. But the courses are crazy and the teachers are mute. The quizzes are cryptic and we aren't given any clues. It's a strange program that is messy and amazing and equally filled with facts and untruths. We are career students pursuing an education in the field of existence, and the only way to graduate with honors is by living with love and offering the goodness of truth. As explorers of our own existence, we must actively engage our incorporeal union and our emotional creatures. We must know where all of our dark parts are and how they influence our actions. We must search for how we can be hurt and how we often hurt others. We must know that relationships of value must be constructed on a strong and stable foundation. We must feel safe enough to explore interesting and uncomfortable ideas. We have to feel like we are heard and our partner is capable of holding space. We have to know that if there is a problem, we can say what we need to say without it ruining the entire day. This is important because weak friendships have no future. If the foundation of our romantic and platonic relationships are flimsy and weak, how can we expect them to be in our corner when we need them the most? How can we expect them to give us the Scooby snacks we need to eat when we are hurting and hungry? Meaningful friendships must have a solid and strong foundation of empathy, humility, and respect. A home built upon the foundation of eggshells will eventually collapse. So our vetting process with others must be equally intense and relaxed. To vet someone, we must interact with them in a way that is fair, honest, and fun, while enforcing our boundaries so we are not chewed up like chewing gum. A vigilant eye will help us thrive, but other times we have to use it to simply survive. In the path of life, we sometimes encounter people who escape definition. They seem so monstrous, our ability to empathize fails, and once again, we feel lost. This kind of creature swims through the waters of life like a hungry shark hunting wayward spirits. Sometimes they sink their teeth into anyone they can bite, but most seek to eat a special kind of treat. The worst monsters we meet prowl the most vulnerable and desperate. They take the bad and boil it down until their victims experience only a hellish frown. They lie, cheat, steal, and destroy for their own pleasure, often with little gain. They slice and stab their victim's skin with their razor-sharp teeth while smiling a sadistic grin. These boundary breakers find their way into our lives, pick and pluck like a buzzard's beak, seeking to peck away our ability to see. When we encounter these kinds of people, we need to step into our strong spaces while offering empathy and remaining humble. We must defend ourselves, but we must also refrain from destroying our boundary breakers in the process. Typically, when we meet these people, their true colors are discovered as we get to know them. Sometimes it takes considerable time to see past their masks, to witness their true face behind the veil. In these instances, I suggest resisting the urge to burn the bridge. But if it is the only way to protect yourself, then we must do whatever it takes to enforce our boundaries. This brings me to Ernest, the life coach. Sitting beside my friend Ernest, we chatted the lazy morning away. We were in Old Town St. Charles enjoying a delicious cup of coffee. Little birds scurried along begging for breadcrumbs, and golden rays slipped through the fluffy cloud blankets, creating a kaleidoscope light show in the street. Beside me was Ernest. He had a lean build halfway between a runner and a weekend warrior. His intensely bored eyes stared into the distance. He was tense and taut as a bow. "What did you think about that book I suggested?" he asked. Watching the steam rise from my cup of coffee, I placed my hand over the delightful heat of the freshly brewed deliciousness. Raising my eyes to his, "Oh, the Mind Over Matter, You Are the Placebo book? It was boring with very little substance." Crossing his arms, Ernest's face reddened as his brow furrowed. I took a deep breath and continued speaking. It was like 400 pages of pseudoscience garbage. I get what the intent of the book is, but it's kind of the message that can lead seriously ill people astray. Ernest shifted in his seat. His body movement sharpened, and he began to speak. "I can't fucking stand people like you. How can you discount and dismiss what you read?" His words boiled with anger. My eyebrow raised. I assumed he took my review as a criticism of him. I was kind of weirded out by his reaction. To ease the discomfort of the scene, I raised the mug to my lips and took a sip. It was my favorite, Highlander grog. Thankfully, it had cooled enough for me to enjoy its exquisite flavor. I looked at him, then back at the bird and the dark river in the distance. It took a few moments of silence for his agitation to subside. As the air cleared, his grimace lowered and his arms uncrossed. "You know, I could have charged you when we first met," he said with a stern face. "But I value our time too much, so I didn't." Slowly, he twisted his face into a half smile. "And I know how much you need our meetings." I shrugged and took a sip of my coffee. "I wouldn't have hired you, so it wouldn't have mattered." His half smile curled into a full, fake smile. Watching his reaction, I continued. "I'm sorry, I don't pay for advice or for people to be my friend," I said, holding my hands on the sides of my warm mug. A few moments passed. Ernest stretched out his leg and sat back in his chair. The pallor of his face started to redden again as he pressed his lips together and narrowed his eyes. "So, what's up? How are things?" Pretty rough. Recovering from chemotherapy has been slow and hard." He stared off into space, then back at me. "You know, the only reason you haven't recovered is because you chose to stay sick, right?" "Excuse me?" I could feel a warm anger in my stomach. "You're choosing to be sick. As soon as you want to get better, you will." He paused for a moment. "That's what Joe Dispenza's talking about, right? This is all mind over matter." "That's not how it works. That's not how chemotherapy or cancer works." I was getting angry, but I was doing my best to remain calm. "That is how it works. If you tell your cells what to do, they heal. If you choose to be sick, you stay sick. You have chosen to stay sick, right? It's your decision. All of this is your decision. You've chosen to stay sick, just as you chose to get cancer." His tone grated on my soul, like being stabbed by the splintered, uneven edge of a broken spear. My blood began to boil. How could he believe this garbage? No one chooses to get cancer. No one wants to be sick. He continued to explain. "I only get sick when I want to. I've been telling my wife and daughter this a long time. To prove it, I told my wife I was choosing to get sick, and I got sick. She used to have headaches all the time. Now I've taught her how to choose not to have them. She doesn't get them anymore. My daughter doesn't listen, though. She's stuck like you are and won't accept she's in control of her health." Ernest's smile and eyes became wide for a moment before continuing. "You are the placebo. If you want it hard enough, you can have anything you want." He paused for a moment and looked at his phone. "I have an appointment. Give me a hug, brother. I'll see you next week." I don't like to see bridges burned, but I do like to see boundaries enforced. To have a relationship with someone, we must build a bridge from our palace to theirs. It requires upkeep and understanding built from a foundation of empathy, humility, and respect. That day, he was in the business of burning bridges. There are certain things we don't burn, just like there are certain things we don't say. It felt like he was in the mood to set my palace on fire, so I turned him towards the bridge. He started by melting and discarding all of his understanding that set flame to empathy, and at the very end, once the bridge began to crumble, my respect for him was gone. I could have stopped the conversation, told him how offensive his statements were, but why? Why put out the flame when the arsonist is just going to set it ablaze again? I'm not a fan of creating a friendship space where others have to walk on eggshells. I prefer creating a place for people to speak their mind, to share their feelings, and connect. If the conversation were simply discussing a difference of opinion, even if it were heated, I would have been cool with it. Growth, after all, does not occur within an echo chamber. We need outside exposure to elements we do not normally encounter to evaluate our ideas, opinions, and beliefs. The core of the problem was he was using me. I was in an interesting spot in life, and he was just starting his life coaching career. He visited with me, I believe, with the intention of using me to have his own really powerful success story. When you believe in the mind over matter concept to the degree that he does, having me in his testimonial database would have been a wonderful marketing resource. Of course, I can't prove this, but what I can prove is we never had a real friendship in the first place. As he said, he could have been charging me for the time we were spending together. Friends don't say that stuff to each other. If I did want a life coach during that phase of my life, it would not have been with him. I would have selected someone with more life experience, someone who knew what it was like to taste the barrel of death and possessed a greater internal harmony than I. He did not possess any of these traits, and as a consequence, I would have never hired him for his services. It's important to know the rules of your relationships. Whenever we enter a relationship, we are introduced to a series of unspoken rules. These are social contracts created from invisible handshakes that set the tone and pace for our budding bond. It would be great if we could assume each participant had the intent of developing a mutually beneficial, honest, and loving relationship. But we must have our guard up to some degree to protect ourselves from malicious, ulterior motives. Sometimes people want us in their lives so they can eat us, and though this is not always true, it occurs enough that it is a real threat. The key is to have tall enough walls that we can prevent people from walking right into our palace, but not so high that they can't peek in. If others can't figure out a way to bridge the gap between us and them, they won't even attempt to forge a connection. This applies equally to how we broadcast our energy in life and when we speak to people we want to have in our social circles. So if you're out and about and you want to be approached, don't close yourself off so much that no one will walk up to you. But at the same time, don't allow yourself to be victimized. We all want friends. So make yourself available enough that people will want to talk to you, while at the same time figuring out a method to push away the monsters who might eat you like a shark.